It's time for The Verdict. The Verdict is a lively discussion of current events and legal issues pertinent to Oklahomans. The Verdict is hosted by Kent Myers and Mick Cornett. The Verdict is sponsored in part by the Able Law Firm. It's time for The Verdict.
And welcome once again to The Verdict. I'm Mick Cornett, and I am joined, as always, by one of Oklahoma's top legal experts, Kent Myers. Kent, what do we have today?
We're going to try to answer the question today, should we have a specialized business court in Oklahoma to decide complex business disputes? We've had specialized courts in many areas in Oklahoma before, mainly in the larger counties, with juvenile courts, probate courts, family or divorce courts, and the like, small claims courts. I guess we could say that this business court might be a big claims court. I don't know. It may be the opposite of small claims. But we have one of the brightest and best from the Oklahoma legislature to be with us today, Lance Cargill, a fellow who is very interested in this subject and has been involved in it, and I think he can give us the pros and cons, if any, to having a specialized business court in Oklahoma.
We will get to a break and get started. This morning we'll discuss the concept of a business court in Oklahoma. It's next on The Verdict. Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, who's going to introduce our guest.
Honored today to have the Honorable Lance Cargill join us. Lance and I have been friends for a number of years. Lance is the state representative from House District 96. He graduated from Harrah High School. He did his undergraduate work at Oklahoma State University in economics and political science, and we're talking about both in this show today, some economics and some political science. And I'm pleased to tell our viewers Lance graduated from Oklahoma State with a straight 4-point average in those subjects. He got his law degree from Vanderbilt Law School. He's in his second term in the House of Representatives. He's married, has one child, and he and his wife are expecting the second, and this is your first appearance on The Verdict, but we hope not your last. Thanks, Lance, for joining us.
Good to be here, Kent.
Representative Cargill, if business court is the solution, then it seems like there must be a problem. What's the problem with the current system we have?
Well, it's not so much a problem as it is how can we improve the current system that we have. I'm very interested in economic development in the state, and to do that I think we have to take a multifaceted approach, and certainly legal reforms, improvements in the legal environment that businesses will face can be a factor that would attract new capital, new businesses to Oklahoma. And so across the country, both businesses and members of the bar have expressed some concerns in recent years over the quality, efficiency, and predictability of decisions in complex commercial matters. And many states have addressed some of these concerns by the creation of a new judicial resource called a specialized business court. And by designating certain judges or certain courts in certain areas of the state as the exclusive forum for complex and large commercial litigation, you see in the bar, in the judiciary rather, a development of a highly specialized, highly competent judiciary to deal with these types of disputes. And so you see those increases in efficiency and predictability as a result of that new system.
We talked a little bit before the show, didn't talk about this, but we see it already in the federal system with a bankruptcy court, I guess, a tax court, a court of claims, patent, trademark appeals, and the like. So this is not a completely unique idea.
Absolutely. Specialization, of course, is not unique to the legal field at all. We see specialization in medicine and other professions. It's really a wave of the future. And we have long had specialized courts, as you suggest, Kent, in the federal system. We also have specialized courts existing within the state system, drug courts, as were mentioned earlier. So the business court would, in theory, be not unlike any of the other specialized courts that we already have.
Let me follow up on that just a minute. As a legislator, you have been involved in an interim study of this subject recently, have you not?
Absolutely.
Tell our viewers about that.
The House Judiciary Committee just a couple of weeks ago had us in for what's called an interim study. We're not in session in the legislature right now, and during the interim, legislators can come before the various committees with idea proposals for possible legislation for the next session. My idea of the business court received a hearing. We had representatives from the state chamber come in. That's the business advocacy group, of course, here in the state of Oklahoma. They're very strongly in favor of the creation of business courts. We also had national representatives from the American Bar Association Subcommittee on Business Courts also here to talk about the possible creation of the court. And it's received a pretty good response, I would say, from both members of the judiciary and the bar across the state.
Would a business court bring these cases to a resolution more quickly? Is that part of it?
Hopefully. That's the idea. As we have a specialized court solely focused on the complex matters, we would expect that the judges and the court personnel would develop an expertise dealing with these cases that would assist them in handling the cases more efficiently. It would also remove from the general court dockets these very large and complex cases, which can slow down the system as a whole. As all judges are having to deal with these larger cases, it can slow down the other cases on their docket.
Well, would this mean that we would have to hire more judges than we have now? Would this be an increased economic drain in an already strained system?
Well, I think, in fact, it would help us economically to develop a specialized court. Let me tell you why. As these judges, again, develop this expertise and can handle these cases more efficiently and more effectively, we would perhaps need less judges to handle the same caseload. New York, for example, experienced a 33% increase in the rate of disposition of complex commercial cases. That would suggest that the work that previously took 4 generalist judges, judges doing all types of legal matters, could now be done by 3 judges handling exclusively complex business litigation.
So efficiency, consolidation, are all those words that you're using with the idea of a business court?
Absolutely. I think in the long term it would actually be a money saver. Nothing says that we have to hire new judges. We can take existing judges already in place, particularly in the larger counties, Oklahoma and Tulsa County, which have a good number of judges existing, and simply designate an existing judge as our business court judge.
Purely hypothetical, but let's assume we have a business court with a business court judge sitting in Oklahoma County, and there's a complex business dispute that arises in Lawton. Different county, the people in Lawton didn't vote for the Oklahoma County judge and vice versa. Would you anticipate that complex case perhaps being transferred to Oklahoma County for disposition?
I think that's certainly an option. I should say that we do not have a draft of the legislation. We're still in the idea-gathering process. The concept of business courts is certainly something I want to promote. What the details are, we're still working with the judiciary and the members of the bar. But other states have done it different ways. Some states have their judges go to, for example, a Lawton, go out into the hinterlands of the state.
Ride the circuit.
Indeed, ride the circuit in judicial parlance, but could go out to Lawton and try the case there with Lawton jurors, etc. Other states have a centralized business court that does not move. It's a fixed location, and a judge in Lawton, for example, could refer that case upon motion of the parties to the Oklahoma City or Tulsa business court. So there's a number of different ways to look at it, and we'll explore all those possibilities.
Let me get us to our first break. We're visiting with State Representative Lance Cargill. You're watching The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers back on The Verdict. This week's guest is State Representative Lance Cargill. We're discussing the possibility of a business court in Oklahoma. Kent, what's next?
Well, the underlying theory, I guess, Lance, is that the business court judge would know a little bit more about some of the laws that deal and resolve business disputes. We elect our district judges now across the state. Would you anticipate in the larger counties, for instance, some judges running on the platform of I could be a good business judge, or would people select the judge based upon their business experience?
Well, again, I would go back to what we already have. Kent, we have specialized judges. We have specialized dockets already. And we have existing judges within the Oklahoma-Tulsa County who are designated the drug court judge, for example, or a judge that's designated to handle the family docket. We could have the exact same experience with the business judge. A particular judge could be designated as the business judge. Now, when that judge is up for re-election, certainly perhaps he could be free to share with the voters his experience as Oklahoma County Business Court judge. But there certainly needs not be a change in the way that we are currently electing or appointing judges across the state.
Representative Cargill, is this the type of issue that might draw lines down Republicans and Democratic lines? And those that have an opinion on tort reform, how might they come down on this issue?
Well, I certainly don't think that this is an issue that breaks on partisan lines. I was just talking a few days ago to the Democrat governor of North Carolina, who is a very strong advocate of this. I think all people of goodwill and good faith who want to see economic development in our state will recognize that businesses across the country are looking for these types of forums to resolve their dispute. In fact, the governor's own economic development committee, EDGE, it's a program that's going on all across the state that is investigating a number of ways that perhaps we could grow Oklahoma's economy. They've come out in at least preliminary favor of a creation of some type of specialized business court. And so I'm hopeful that it will not break along party lines. I don't expect that it would. Tort reform, workers' comp reform, there are a number of different issues that go into the idea of legal reform. Those do sometimes break down on partisan lines. The creation of a business court that would handle business exclusive disputes, I don't think it breaks down in the same manner.
If I were a person, though, who opposed tort reform, for instance, how might I feel about a business court? Is there an obvious answer?
Well, there's certainly major differences, I think, in a general tort case versus the type of dispute that would be handled in a business court. A tort case, a lot of times, is just a single person, an individual who's been wronged in some way.
And that wouldn't be affected by a business
Absolutely
court.
not.
Because this is business to business.
Right. The business court would be exclusively limited to very large commercial complex business cases. The loser in a business case most likely is going to be another corporation because individuals and products liability, employment matters, etc. would remain in the general court system.
This may have already answered the next question I have, but let's see. Some of the written objections I've seen to business courts suggest that maybe these courts are biased in favor of business. How would you respond to that?
Well, I would say, again, certainly not. In a business court, the winners typically would be a business, but the loser would be a business as well. It will be a business-to-business situation in those cases.
What about large businesses versus small business? Any advantage there? And can you look at what other states have done and detect whether large businesses have an advantage in a business court over a smaller business?
Well, in fact, I would say maybe just the opposite it would be the case, because obviously a large business can lawyer up, bring in a lot of resources to a courtroom. It would help to have a very knowledgeable judge who could see through perhaps some of that that big armada of legal resources that a big company would bring, in a skilled single lawyer working for a small company maybe would actually have an advantage in a forum where the judge is very knowledgeable about all the ins and outs of business law.
Well, we spoke just a minute ago about you had talked to the governor of North Carolina. I know other states have dealt with this. Can you give us kind of a rundown of how business courts have been received across the country and what other states have done?
Yeah, Kent, the literature is very positive out there throughout the legal community about the experiences of the business courts. Now, to be sure, each state has a separate model. Some states, again, have a fixed business court, doesn't move. Other states have judges who go around all across the state handling business disputes. Each state has to tailor their business court to their own specific situation. But the response really unanimously across the country has been very positive Again, I'd cite the example of New York, 33% increase in the rate of disposition in cases. And North Carolina, going back to that example, the governor said he really enjoyed having the argument of a business court to go out to new corporations that he was trying to attract, or corporations that he was trying to keep in North Carolina, and offer them this high-quality, specific forum for the resolution of their disputes.
So the way you would see it is there would be no jury trials.
No, that is not the case. The right to a jury is sacrosanct. It's in our Constitution, and I'm certainly not trying to amend our judicial system so fundamentally as to take away the right to a jury. But what happens so many times in these business disputes, they are settled, or they are concluded as a matter of law early on before they get to the jury. Motions for summary judgment, motions to dismiss. They're dismissed on legal issues, not just fact issues. And a highly skilled, specialized judge would know the law and be able to move those cases along faster.
So a business court would still have a jury. There would just be a judge that's specially qualified to deal with business-to-business situations and might be able to help it bring it to a resolution before a jury ever was able to act.
That's exactly right. Okay. Fundamentally, if the case is not decided as a matter of law up front, the case would still go to a jury. But as that jury trial proceeds, again, you would have an expert judge sitting and presiding over that trial.
Refocusing on some of the specialized courts we have now in Oklahoma, with juvenile, family, probate, etc. Once those cases are appealed to our appellate courts, we don't have specialized judges at the appellate level. They handle all the appeals. Would you envision the same kind of system?
Certainly. Yeah, I think the current appeal process that we have in Oklahoma works well. In fact, it is a progressive system. Many other states, I think, would do well to model our system. And I think it's worked well, and I don't envision any changes to that.
We've got about 30 seconds left. What's the timetable for your legislation?
Well, we'll have draft legislation introduced in February when the new legislative session starts. We'll continue to communicate with members of the bar and the judiciary throughout the state, come up with some model legislation, perhaps start pilot programs just in Oklahoma and Tulsa County, see how those work, and then look at maybe expanding it across the state.
Any idea how the governor feels?
Again, his EDGE committee, appointed by the governor, has endorsed the creation of...
Chaired by Miles Talbert, who's been on this show.
Absolutely. Have endorsed the idea, so I'm hopeful that we'll have the governor's support as well.
Right. Representative Lance Cargill, thanks for coming on The Verdict.
Good to be here.
Thank you.
Kent and I'll be right back. Are back to wrap up another edition of The Verdict. Today we discussed business courts and the possibilities of instituting them in Oklahoma.
It's an intriguing idea, and one for which we do have some history here. For instance, I from time to time have an opportunity to be involved in the juvenile court, where juvenile judges sit there and deal with nothing other than juvenile cases. They don't deal with any other kind, and they become quite experienced, quite efficient, and effective in rendering decisions in that area of the law that most judges don't know much about. I think this opportunity to establish a business court where complex cases are tried, as I understand the proposal, it would not have individuals. If an individual was a plaintiff or a defendant, that case would not go to the business court. It would just be business-to-business disputes, and that has an opportunity of freeing up judges to do a lot of other things, and the judge that either wants those cases or gets assigned the complex cases may have a full docket for a while. But it's an idea that I would be surprised if it was not enacted in the near future.
It'll be interesting to follow it in the next legislative session.
And we'll have Lance back to tell us about it.
Be good. Thanks again to our guest, Representative Lance Cargill. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. We will see you next time on The Verdict.
You've been watching The Verdict with Kent Myers and Mick Cornett. The Verdict is sponsored in part by the Able Law Firm,